When we think about history, our minds usually jump to big battles or famous leaders. But sometimes the most powerful stories are found in the quiet, everyday lives of a single family. Today, we're going to open up a kind of family album to meet John and Grace Taylor. Their life on a farm at the turn of the 20th century, well, it gives us this incredible window into the kind of resilience and sheer hard work that really built a nation. So, our story takes place in Atwood, Illinois, a small farming community that was, for the Taylor family, their entire world. This wasn't just some dot on a map. It was the stage for a life of incredible hard work and, a quiet kind of dignity. Looking at these pictures really takes you back, doesn't it? We're talking dirt roads, not paved streets, the sound of horse hooves, not car engines. This was the world right before all the things we take for granted, electricity, running water, all of that, would completely change everything. It's a world that feels a million miles away, but it's so important for us to get. And right at the heart of this world was the family matriarch, Grace Lucinda Taylor. Her story, man, it's just this powerful testament to the huge, and let's be honest, often invisible work that so many women of her time shouldered. So Grace, born in 1877, she was basically the quiet engine that kept the whole household running. And the reason we know this is thanks to her son, Bob, who left behind this really vivid picture of his mom. He remembered her as gentle, never one to scold, and just incredibly hardworking. As the oldest of 7 kids, she learned what responsibility was from a really young age, and that pretty much defined her entire life. Okay, so get this. What did a day in her life actually look like? Well, it started before dawn, every single day. She was the first one up, building fires in the stoves till they were red hot, just to get the chill out of the house. Only then would she call the rest of the family to get up. And while the men were out milking, a full breakfast would just appear on the table. Not just for her family, but for any hired hands, too. And only then, after all that, could the cleanup even start, washing dishes with water she had to carry in from the well and heat up on that same stove. Her son Bob looked back on all this years later, and his words just capture the sheer scale of her work. He was just amazed by what she managed to do, day in and day out. It's an incredible reminder that what they considered normal back then, well, for us, it's almost superhuman. And believe it or not, the morning was just the warm-up. The work never stopped. Imagine washing clothes on this old rub-it-up machine, then hanging them out to literally freeze solid in the winter. Ironing with these heavy cast irons you had to keep heating on the stove. Baking every single loaf of bread from scratch. And keeping the house clean, which meant hauling coal in and hauling ashes out every single day. I mean, this isn't just housekeeping, right? This was the hard, physical labor that literally fueled the entire family. But here's the thing. Grace's work didn't just stop at the front door. Not even close. Her responsibilities were just as critical out on the farm itself. She wasn't just the farmer's wife. No way. She was a farmer, period. She was running a huge part of the family business. Okay, let this number sink in for a second. 1,500. That's how many chickens her son remembers her raising and selling at one time. I mean, this isn't some backyard hobby. This was a full-blown business that she was running on top of everything else we just talked about. And you can bet that raising 1,500 chickens meant you were in a constant 24/7 battle. During the day, you had hawks and crows, but at night, that's when the real threats came out. Rats, skunks, weasels, possums. It seemed like absolutely everything was trying to get a piece of that. Her son said she must have slept with one ear open. And one night, that vigilance was really put to the test. She heard some kind of commotion, a strange noise that woke her up, and she went out to the chicken coop to see what was going on. And what she found was just devastating. A weasel had gotten into one of the coops and had already attacked 20 chickens. And her son points out something pretty chilling here. A weasel doesn't kill for food, but just to slaughter. It's such a brutal reminder of how, on a farm, your entire livelihood could be threatened in just a few minutes. Okay, here's another story. One night, a hen just wouldn't settle down, so Grace and her husband John went out to check, carrying a lantern and a shotgun. Suddenly, something darts out. John fires the shotgun and this thing goes tumbling. He thinks he got a possum, but when he looks closer, he realizes he'd only shot its tail off. And they just watched as this clever little animal played dead until they finally walked away. It's a great little story that shows you the constant dangers, yeah, but also the family's toughness, and maybe even a little bit of that dark farm humor.
But life wasn't all just struggle and fighting off predators. Grace was also known for having a serious green thumb. She had these huge vegetable gardens that fed the family all year round, and a massive flower garden almost 70 feet long just for the beauty of it. It just shows you this whole other side of her, right? The creator, the nurturer.
Now, of course, Grace wasn't a one-woman show. Her husband, John A. Taylor, was the quiet, steady force right there beside her, the other half of this incredible partnership. And you can really see here how they just fit together perfectly, where Grace was this tireless, gentle, social heart of the farm, famous for her cooking and her gardens. John was the solid and strong one. He was well-educated, a respected horse breeder, and most importantly, a man of his word, quiet but deeply caring. So, what was John like? Well, his son remembered him as being about 5'11", just solidly built and strong. But it was his character that really made him stand out. He was known all over the community as a man you could absolutely trust. And that quality, your word being your bond, that was everything in a community like that. And John wasn't just your typical farmer either. He was actually sent to a boys' boarding school, which made him pretty well educated for his time. He was also a skilled horse breeder, and he owned a prized stallion. You gotta remember, back in those days, a good team of horses, that wasn't just like owning a tractor. It was a huge source of pride, a real status symbol. And under that tough exterior, his son remembered him as a really generous and caring dad. But this world that John and Grace had built with their own hands, it was about to get hit by a series of massive shocks. Their personal story was about to collide head-on with these huge historical forces. Just take a look at this timeline. It's rough. First, the family makes it through the horrible 1918 flu pandemic that killed millions. Then, in early 1929, they make this life-changing choice to leave the farm. And just a few months later, late 1929, the stock market crashes and the country plunges into the Great Depression. I mean, the timing, you couldn't make it up. It was absolutely catastrophic. So the world they knew, the only one they'd ever known, was basically disappearing from under their feet. After leaving the farm, John, a man defined by his strength and skill, was suddenly in a world with no jobs, especially for a guy in his 50s whose entire life had been on the farm. And their son's words about this time, they just hit so hard. For a generation of proud, hardworking men like John, whose whole identity was wrapped up in providing for their family, this wasn't just about money. It was this deep, psychological blow. It was a bitter pill. And as his son points out, it was a pill some men just couldn't swallow. They never recovered. So in the end, the story of John and Grace, it's so much more than just one family's memory, right? It's a snapshot of an entire generation, one defined by incredible resilience, a deep work ethic, and the quiet strength it took to face a world that was rapidly and pretty brutally changing.